What's up, everybody? My name is Brad and welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to the channel for the very first time. I appreciate you guys spending your time with me, hanging out while I ramble on talking about books. And today's video is going to be no different. I'm going to be rambling about books. And the actual idea for today's video came from the old Tickty Tok, old TikTok platform, app, whatever you want to call it, which I spend probably way too much time on, but I did get a video idea, so I guess it's not all completely bad. But I saw a video on there, and I can't remember exactly what it was titled, but it was something along the lines of books that I would sell my soul to be able to read again for the very first time. I thought that was a pretty cool idea, so I'm going to steal it and do a video on my own. It wasn't talking about books that you would like to reread, but books that you have read before that you wish you could experience and read again for the very first time. So everything you remember of that book is completely wiped out, and you're going into the book as if you've never read it before. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. So I've got some books here I want to talk about. I think there's 6 books or so. These are all books that impacted me in one way or another that I would love to read and experience again and discover again for the very first time as if I had never read them before. So we'll go ahead and we'll dive right into it. First up, I'm going to talk about a book. I think I lent it to my friend. I don't have a physical copy here. So I'm going to talk about this one first before I forget. And I'm sure you all are getting sick and tired of me talking about this book because I feel like I mention it every single video. I even talked about it on Monday in my 23 books I want to read in 2023. So if you haven't watched that video, check that out. I'll link it up here, self-plug. But that book wasn't even in that video. I was just talking about that author and had to bring up that book. And it is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This book literally blew my mind. Just the explosions going everywhere. I was completely shocked by it. I was completely caught off guard in the best of ways. I don't think I've ever read a book that I really had no idea where it was going or what the trajectory was or what all was actually taking place with these characters and the storyline in the book. And afterwards, after I read it, I read some of the reviews, and some people said they figured out what was going on like halfway through or so, that it was predictable for them. That was absolutely not the case for me whatsoever, but I also don't think I was trying to predict what was going on, what was happening ahead in the book. I was sort of living in the moment with these characters, with whatever was currently going on in their particular predicament. But it was an amazing, it's a masterpiece. And I don't use that word lightly. It's very intricately done. There's lots of reveals along the way, not twists. We had Catriona on Paper Cuts, and she said she doesn't like the word twist. She likes the word reveal instead. She felt twist is kind of cheap, just kind of throwing something in there that really didn't have any build up, didn't have any setup to it. So reveal is what she liked better. There's all kinds of reveals to it. And there was one point along the way, maybe like 70, 80% or so were into the book, and I thought everything had been revealed already. I was like, okay, I finally know what's going on. I know what character is what and what's going on and who did what and all this kind of stuff. And she did it again. She pulled out this other reveal that just completely shocked me. I was not expecting. I thought she played all her cards, and she totally had that ace still up her sleeve to lay down on the table. It's a fantastic book. Do not read the synopsis. Do not read any reviews. If you have not read it, go into it as blind as you possibly can. I think that will serve you much better in the long run. Going into it really not knowing anything about the book. It really is a masterpiece, the way she was able to have all these puzzle pieces sort of scattered around, and then by the end, they all fit perfectly together. She did a fantastic job with fitting everything together, making this cohesive story out of all these moving parts. And it's even confusing at times. There was one part in particular, it's not really a spoiler, but in one chapter, they were talking about the carpet in the house was blue, and then the next chapter, another character was talking about the carpet in the house was like orange. I was like, she messed up. She did something wrong. There's a typo here. It's a mess up. It's not. She knows exactly what she's doing. Just trust in the process, trust in the story. I think you'll enjoy it. I sure did. Like I said, it blew me away. I thought it was a masterpiece. Definitely a book that I wish I could relive those revealing moments for the very first time again. That is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. All right, now for the physical books that I won't forget because they're sitting right here. Next up is The Boatman's Daughter by Andy Davidson. This book, first of all, it's a really cool paperback. If you get a copy of it, like the red and everything, it looks like snake skin wrapped around, and actually has some texture to it. It's not just completely smooth. So I like the presentation of it. But the story here, it's a beautifully written story. Annie Davidson has some really beautiful prose. It's a sort of this backwoods, southern gothic noir folklore kind of story. But the writing more so, I enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the characters. But more so, just his writing was fantastic. You can almost feel the atmosphere. It's just dripping with this atmosphere. It takes place in Arkansas, I believe. It's either Arkansas or Alabama. And you can just feel it takes place in like the swamps and the bayous and the backwoods and everything. You can just feel the humidity. You can feel the sweat dripping off your forehead. You can hear the mosquitoes buzzing in your ear. It's like almost like this sensory overload, this rich fabric that he has woven. And sensory overload in a good way, because it really puts you in the world right beside these characters. I don't really want to say too much about the plot, but it's about this young girl who sort of lives out on her own, going through the waterways and stuff with her boat. She kind of is I don't want to say what she is, but she's sort of taking care of this really young boy and this sort of older lady that live out in the woods. She's kind of this witch kind of lady, this young boy, and she's kind of protecting them from some other bad people. And the story goes on from there. It's an enriching story. I really enjoyed it, but the writing itself, the prose, is just absolutely beautiful. So if you love Southern Gothic stuff, if you love stuff set in the South with like the bayous and the swamps and whatnot, and you just want this really, there's this cool folklore aspect. If you can tell by the cover, this thing is in the book. Cool folklore aspect all wrapped up into one package. I highly recommend you check it out. He has 2 other books. One of them I also talked about in the video on Monday, the 23 books I want to read in 2023. The Hollow Kind. He's got another one called In the Valley of the Sun, which is a vampire novel, which I'm just dying to read. I've got it over here somewhere in this room. But yeah, The Boatman's Daughter by Annie Davidson. Beautifully written book. Great story. I would say it's more like literary horror fiction. So if you like the more literary stuff, definitely check out Annie Davidson. Next up is Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bastarrica. This book is another one that just kind of knocked me on my ass, kind of floored me a bit. It's this dystopian setting, but the cool thing about this book is everything feels like it could really happen. Like the plot line in this book, if I woke up tomorrow morning and saw what was going on here on the morning news, I would totally believe it. It's such a believable thing, and it feels so real, like it could really happen. If you are weak of stomach with the things that you eat, you might want to steer clear of this one. It's not that it's overly graphic or gory or anything, but it's dealing with cannibalism. But cannibalism in that it's just natural. It's the order of things. That's just how things are. It's not like apocalyptic where there's these tribes of people eating each other or whatnot. It's just, I'm hungry. I'm going to go to the grocery today and I'm going to pick out this package of human feet, or I'm going to run by McDonald's and get me a human meat burger or whatever. It's normal. It's the normal day to day, because all the animals in the world were infected by this disease, and it doesn't really harm the animals, but it's extremely dangerous and deathly to humans. So we basically eradicated all animal life on Earth. And what do we need to eat now? Protein wise, we're eating and growing other people for the sole purpose of slaughtering them so we can chow down on our cheeseburgers or whatever. But the ending of this it shocked me. I was not expecting the ending, and it was fantastic in the best possible way. But yeah, this is a really dark, gritty, really brutal tale. Again, it's not graphic or gory, just, they're raising humans as livestock for the sole purpose of breeding them. There's even like big game hunting. They're not going to Africa to shoot elephants anymore. They're in this arena shooting humans because that's the sport of it. Growing people to be served up on your Sunday dinner table. It's a really great book. Her writing is great as well. I feel like I saw that this was being adapted to a movie or film, but I can't find that anymore. So maybe I was just imagining that. I would love to see it adapted, though. That'd be great, to like a mini series on HBO or something. A really brutal, dark book. Very realistic, though. Like I said, it feels like this could all possibly happen, and if it did, it wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. This is Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. Next up, so this book is probably the whole reason I'm sitting in front of this camera making book videos. If it wasn't for this book, I probably wouldn't be reading anything at all, probably. I think I read this, and I'm probably going to get my date wrong, but maybe back in like 2015, 2014, I want to say. And this is the book that got me back into reading the way I am now. I read when I was in like elementary school, and then from like middle school on until about 8 years ago or so-ish, I really wasn't reading anything at all because I just had no desire to read. But I read this book, and it's funny because it's like a big chunker 800-page book was like the book that got me back into reading, and that is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I love the story of this book. I love all the characters, but I really love the world building aspect to this book. Even like in the back, if you look at the appendix, it's got all the different houses and all the different characters in the houses, like all these family trees. I just love the sort of history of it. It's really enriching, and you can really tell that he did a fantastic job of building this world and making it feel real and as believable as you can for a fantasy world. And I read some other fantasy books where the world just sort of feels kind of paint by numbers and sort of generic. But this one, he really gets down into the details. For me, I like history, and I think that sort of poured into my appreciation for this book, the history of it. Everything in this book like has history behind it. The wall, the different houses, the family lineages. I don't know if I even said that word right. The family trees, everything. The history of all the dragons before and how magic went away and all that stuff. I loved it. It's fantastic. I wish I could go back into it and experience it for the first time. I wish I could erase the memory of the last season of the TV show from my mind and just pretend it never happened. It just never existed. And I know people give George a lot of crap for, is he going to finish the last 2 books? Is he not? Whether he does or doesn't, I really hope he does, but whether he does or he doesn't, this book will hold a special place in my heart because it got me back into reading, finding the love of reading again. Like, I read this before I'd ever read even any Stephen King book, so this led me to Stephen King and so on, to me sitting in this chair right now talking to you guys about this book. So yeah, I'm sure most people know what this one's about, so I won't say much more about it, but I wish I could read this one again for the first time. A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. All right, so next up, and this author I'm going to talk about. If you are a fan, if you like this author, I'm just going to go ahead and say what it is. Stephen Graham Jones, The Only Good Indian. So if you like Stephen Graham Jones, their styles aren't necessarily the same, but if you like his sort of type of writing, I think you'll dig Andy Davidson. I talked about his book earlier, The Boatman's Daughter. So if you like Stephen Graham Jones, check out Andy Davidson, or vice versa. If you like Andy Davidson, check out some Stephen Graham Jones. This one's The Only Good Indians. I read this one 2 years ago or so, I think. And I'll be honest, like the first chapter or so, something about it, I wasn't really vibing with it. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like, oh, this is great, this is fantastic. I don't know. There was something that just felt kind of off about it. And what I figured out is that I was reading the book too fast. And this book is something that should be read slowly. I mean, you can read it however you want to. I'm not telling you how to read, but for me, it was a much, much better experience reading it slowly, taking my time with it, not trying to speed read through it so I could get to 100 books read on Goodreads for that year. And actually pausing at the commas, taking my time with it. It's written in sort of this cadence in a way. And there's big, long run-on sentences and stuff. But if you pause at the commas and actually slow down and take your time with it, it flows. It has this rhythm to the writing. And this is a book, I've really never read a horror story quite like this one. It brings in some Native American folklore. I believe Stephen Graham Jones is part of the Blackfeet clan. I was going to say if it had a bio in here, but I don't think it does. I think he's a Blackfeet. and the characters in here are also Blackfeet as well. So brought in this Native American aspect, but like, I don't know, it was maybe like 40% through, like something changed, like in a split second, and just completely changed the trajectory of the story, not the directory, the trajectory, where we're going of the story. And I was shocked by that moment. If you check out my review, I talk about it. It was like this whirlwind of activity. I was just completely jaw dropped, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I was not expecting that. And the book just took a completely different direction on that point, and I was so on board from then on. I was enjoying it before, but when we hit that moment, I was so on board. I was so enthralled and invested with the rest of the story. It's really cool. There's some sports stuff in here as well, which sounds weird with it being about an elk and whatnot. But cool sports references mixed up with this cool horror, this folklore and myth from Native Americans. Great story. I loved it. I've read a few Stephen Graham Jones books, and this one still stands at the peak at number 1. The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. All right, and the last book we're going to talk about today. So it's a Stephen King book, and honestly, this whole video could have been all about Stephen King books, but I limited myself to one, and it's probably not one most people would pick. You know, I could have picked Salem's Lot. It's probably my favorite Stephen King overall. Could have picked it or Pet Sematary, but no, I didn't choose any of those. The one I chose is The Dark Tower, which is book number 7, the final book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. And this book is just like all the emotions come to a head in this book if you've been reading the series. And the Dark Tower series is probably my favorite completed series that I've ever read. I would say A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones is, but that one's not done yet. There's still supposedly 2 books left. This one's all done and wrapped up, and it is my favorite series that I've ever read. And like I said, this book is super emotional. You know, you're 7 books deep. You're super invested in all the characters at this point. Eddie, Jake, Susanna, Roland, Oi. And it's just like gut punch after gut punch after gut punch, like in the middle of the book. But the one thing I wish I could experience again, more so than anything else in this book, is the ending. I absolutely loved the ending. I think it was perfect. I think it was brilliant. I don't think you could have ended this series any other way. And I don't want to say anything else about it because I don't want to ruin it. But literally, like reading the last couple paragraphs, I do that every so often. And every time it just sends chills, you know, up and down my arms, get the goosebumps and whatnot. The ending to this is brilliant. I know some people don't like the ending. They think it was cheap. And they're wrong. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but they're wrong if they didn't like this ending. Joking, not joking. It's amazing. It's brilliant. I loved it. If you've read any of the books at all, King talks about Ka, which is this wheel, how things come around again and again and again, this sort of circle of life. That's very important in the story throughout the series. And some people say you should skip The Gunslinger, book 1, if you're going into the series, because some people don't like it as much as the other ones. Absolutely do not do that. The Gunslinger might not be the best book in the series, but it is essential to enjoying the ending of the series. It is you must read The Gunslinger to really be fulfilled and savor what happens at the end of the book. Don't skip The Gunslinger. That's the worst thing you can do because the ending won't be as impactful if you skip that book. But yeah, I love this book. Even though it broke my heart a bunch of times, the ending was just fantastic. It was a great conclusion to an epic series of books that I loved. This is The Dark Tower, book number 7 in the Dark Tower series by old Uncle Stevie King. But that's it. Those are the 5 or 6 books that I wish, or that I would sell my soul again to be able to reread again, or to be able to read again for the very first time. So do you have any books that you wish you could experience and read and discover again for the first time? If so, let me know what they are down in the comments. If you've read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts about those are in the comments as well. That's it. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed the video, consider clicking the subscribe button. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, helps me out, makes me happy. If you do it, you're cool. I'll give you 2 thumbs up. If you don't do it, you're still cool if you made it this far in the video anyway. But yeah, like I said, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for spending your time with me. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.